Hello, I'm Jordan Midler and welcome to Raj Quit, a show about video games. This week we're talking about Call of Duty Modern Warfare and the most pointless video game reboots of all time. Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which is of course different from Call of Duty Modern Warfare, is the latest in the shootery-pokery series that has been the cause of more increased blood pressure than snorting fat lines of salt. I have to admit it's pretty bold calling your game the same as the best first-person shooter ever made, but considering the goodwill for the Call of Duty series among gamers is down there next to dinosaur bones, calling it Modern Warfare at least guaranteed them sales from the folk that are a bit too into guns. In the tradition of Modern Warfare, it has a blockbuster campaign that, while visually impressive, has the subtlety of a pantomime dame. While it occasionally decided to have an introspective ball scratch about the morality of war, this being a game about being a big tough soldier man comes down on the side of war, contrary to popular belief, not being good for absolutely nothing. Comically, the game begins with a warning for the player that the game will contain graphic content and an offer to turn it off. Although I don't know what kind of dark web Serbian film tier content the developers grew up on, but the last time I checked, turning a soldier inside out with improvised explosives, still pretty graphic. Although I didn't turn it off because, I'm a lad. The campaign is the best one they've done in years and brings back the BBC Two Sunday night drama theatrics that used to get them inches in the awful papers. There's a memorable level set in Piccadilly Circus that's only marginally more harrowing than actually visiting the place. While most of the characters are about as memorable as an X Factor quarter finalist, Big John Price and his moustache is back, so if you've got time for people that say things like UAV online in a gruff voice, you're in for a treat. In multiplayer, things are mostly traditional, save for Ground War, a new large-scale mode that is so Battlefield it's almost criminal. As a game mode, it's a bit like the world's hardest eye test, where you have a nanosecond to decide if the pixel across the map is a piece of scenery, or if you're going to get your jaw spun around at 1000 RPM. Modern Warfare is really good, but it never hits the heights of the game that it's named for. It takes its shot, but it can only ever hit the post. Modern Warfare. This generation has been rife with developers deciding that original names for games were so 2010. Tomb Raider, which is of course different from Tomb Raider, was the rebooted story of how noted pottery hater and Oxbridge gap year taker Lara Croft learned how to get the shit kicked out of her and never bothered to put on a jumper. This was an effective reboot because the original games controlled like Lara was a woman-shaped tank and finally provided enough backstory that the character was no longer relegated to the masturbatory aid of sweaty Lucozade fans. To say the reboot was a bit uncharted is to say that Donald Trump's tweets are a bit out there. It couldn't be more Nathan Drake if she cut her hair and started murdering people by the thousands. Actually, scratch that last bit, because by the end of Tomb Raider, which is of course different from Tomb Raider, you'll have murdered so many people and endangered species that your butler will lock himself in the freezer for fear that you'll come back to the mansion and instantly stick a priceless Aztec scepter through his ear. Doom, which is of course different from Doom, was another from the Modern Warfare school of renaming your game after something so iconic you might as well have called it Abbey Road, and while at least had the decency to wait 20 odd years unlike Tomb Raider and Modern Warfare, it was also so good that if I used the explicit language appropriate enough to describe how much I love this game, I would be removed from the channel. You see, Doom, which is of course different from Doom, decided that the very last thing it needed to be was different from Doom. Too many reboots get up their own arse about how they can translate these antiquated characters from the 90s into the modern age, whereas Doom thought, sack that, let's make a game so celebratory of the 90s that it looks like archive footage of Tony Blair while Oasis plays Nebworth in the background. Finally, we have the mind-melting example of a reboot that's also a sequel in the case of God of War, which is of course different from God of War, but also a sequel to God of War 3, but also a totally different style of game. Anyway, the point is, I don't understand why they couldn't have just called it God of War 4. I mean, it's not like games haven't completely jumped the shark with naming conventions. Final Fantasy made that decision for all of us many ridiculous haircuts ago. The strange thing about reboots like this is that I like to think about someone in the future going back to play the God of War series and getting through these 3 games of Kratos shouting the entire Greek pantheon to death before starting up this exploration of Kratos shouting, "Boy." It'd be like if you were watching the first 3 Harry Potter films and then the 4th one was suddenly all long hair and melodrama and puberty. Wait a minute. Anyway, although pointless, a lot of these remakes do turn out really well, although it tends to be from franchises that were already good in the first place, so you can leave your Gex and your Brutal Legend and your Crash Bandicoot where they belong, in the landfill of gaming memory, never to be thought of again. Let me know your favourite remake in the comments below, or a remake you'd really like to see. Until next time, I'm Jordan Midler. See you later.